Okay, everyone, are we ready to close out our first day to Mexico strong? We've got, I know I'm the only one separating you from happy hour and our social activities. I promise we'll get you out of here in a half hour or so, depending on questions. But I think you'll find what I have to say interesting. We'll challenge you a little bit. How many of you knew that this year marks the 200th anniversary of Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein, from 1818? Was anybody aware of that? One person in the front. We also have Halloween coming up next month. There's a number of people around the world that will be celebrating Halloween globally. I thought we could have a little bit of fun drawing some analogies between monsters and fiction with some of the trends that are happening in MarTech, just to kind of make it a little bit of a dry subject, a little bit more interesting. So I'll do the best that I can with that. So let me start by asking a question. What was Dr. Frankenstein inspired to create? Anybody want to venture a response to that? A human being? Yeah, I would say life. You know, that's kind of what Dr. Frankenstein was after, was creating life. And so, you know, in much the same way, what would you say CMOs are inspired to create? Anyone? Anybody have a beer before coming into this room? Maybe we should have had happy hour first. All right, I'll give you the answer on this one. I'd say growth. I think most of us would agree that CMOs, marketers, are really charged with creating growth within their companies. They're going to invest their marketing dollars to grow revenue, grow sales, grow profit. And I would just kind of ask, now, how have CMOs essentially gone about their creation, right? So if we look back in the early days, we all know it was relatively simple. We had 3 primary channels, 3 sources within each channel. For example, ABC, CBS, NBC. New York Times, et cetera, just a few places where you could invest your marketing dollars. And we try to understand the effectiveness of our marketing through ratings agencies, market research firms. We would do local geo studies to kind of take a look at lift and in-store sales within certain geo markets to kind of test the effectiveness of our advertising. But it was broadcasting and estimating at best. And then what happened, right? We all know the internet happened, right? And this created this enormous world of interconnectivity between people and content, and it gave CMOs something very powerful. I'll ask you the last question, right? What would you guess the internet really enabled CMOs with? What did it give them? Data. I would say it gave them the potential of addressability, using data to target people very precisely. And when you think about it, this is sheer marketing nirvana, right? The first time in history we're able to have the potential to know exactly who's looking at what, when, where, essentially. And since understanding the potential of this, marketers have aspired to build technology that's based on the superpower of addressability. And so we've set out to build software that lets us target our ideal customer. We've also set out to build solutions that let us measure how well we do this. But along the way, what we've learned is that it's a lot of hard work, right? We're starting to realize that we may not have everything connected just right. And in many cases, things have just gotten downright messy and out of control. And so after all this hard work towards realizing our potential, it's still not getting us to where we want to go or providing us the answers that we need. So while most marketers strive to be data-driven, you may or may not know that only 26% of organizations say that they have a solid data-driven marketing strategy. Right? And only 29% of advertisers consider measurement data completely trustworthy, right? And why? This stuff is hard, right? And they know they've got some things connected wrong. And all the while, marketers continue to spend $1 trillion in marketing globally. So it's absolutely imperative, and I believe that it's inevitable that we are going to get this right. So what's going on? Let's kind of unpack. Why is this so hard, right? And what are the challenges that we're dealing with? The way I see it, all marketers originally set out to build a Superman of marketing, a Superstack, if you will. One that allows us to see past the murkiness, take effective actions that we thought were otherwise impossible. Yet instead of a Superstack, it seems what many of us have really built is a Frankenstack, right? This mishmash of half-functioning point solutions, tools that have all been kind of stitched together that kind of sort of works, but we don't really know, right? We're lacking the confidence in what we've put together. And it's created a lot of frustration in some marketers that they would rather destroy, as I'm depicting here in this picture. And so if that's true, how was this monster built to begin with? And so I want to kind of break that down. Let's take a look. So many brands will begin building their Superstack by organically investing in several marketing channels: paid search, Facebook ads, affiliate, email, display, etc. And then right away, the monster really starts to reveal itself. Kind of an easy thing to point out first. There's fraud embedded in pretty much all marketing today. And it's depicted here in the black segments, if you didn't see that animation that showed there. And typically, teams are operating in silos, right? They're measuring to their own budgets and their own scoreboards. And then undoubtedly, CMOs start asking tough questions about ROI, right? And while teams are continuing to operate in their silos, they really can't answer her questions with confidence, and there's certainly no holistic view of the marketing spend. So what happens? Tools, right? Tools are seen as kind of the answer to solve all of these problems and challenges. And this is really where the monster, I think, starts to reveal itself, right? These tools usually start with spreadsheets. It will include a proprietary data warehouse, an attribution vendor, visualization tools, analytics vendors, email vendors, the list goes on, right? And it gets worse when you see these tools being duplicated within each of the siloed channels, right? And I'll save you from showing you yet another LoomEscape slide. I think you understand what's going on here and where this is headed. And when we try to imperfectly interconnect and stitch everything together is when this data monster comes to life. Okay, a true Frankenstein gives out an answer that seems to make sense at face value, but based on any analytical standard is just not sound. Why? Because even if you had all these things working well, which is almost never the case, few of these tools, if any, were designed to address the needs of today's marketer, especially from a holistic viewpoint. And moreover, brands aren't even aware of how inaccurate some of their data is. So what's wrong with this monster? Why is it not what we want? Let me take a shot at maybe kind of defining what are the characteristics of a Frankenstack. The first I would start with is lack of data transparency, right? You don't know who compiled the data, where the data came from, what your internal processes are to assemble the data. You don't have drillability into the data to understand these things, and it's not accessible in a user-friendly way. Marketing events, these are impressions, clicks, and conversion events, are not tracked and cataloged with source data information along with their attributed value. And it's not enough for systems to consume data, right? It's imperative that you have systems to track data so that you can gain access to this meta-level information. Google, for example, will notoriously hide event-level data, while Yahoo will more typically disclose it. A little easier platform to work with from a tracking standpoint. So I implore you to kind of find out whether or not your stack is providing that level of transparency. And this generally bleeds into a case of dealing with aggregate level data, right? This is generally when you're enamored with these what I call IT-less sort of systems, like visualization tools that are giving you like the high level, aggregate level reporting. You find yourself just kind of aggregating. It's just simply not actionable data, right? And so these solutions not only consume data, are basically only tasked with consuming data rather than performing a very critical function of tracking data that will validate and confirm whether or not impressions, click, conversion events are actually happening along with their source data. So insights at the event level are just super important in understanding the root cause of your marketing performance. If things spike up or down, you need to know what caused that spike to happen. I've personally seen cases of this many times. One case in particular, we've got a subscription-based retailer just using a combination of a modern visualization tool with Excel. Found themselves in love with great-looking reporting. Visualization tools make things look amazing. But when the marketing team who's doing a lot of the media planning gets into it, they realize that they're looking at just aggregate-level channel kind of assembled reports, and on their own had to build their own webhooks using Excel into their own proprietary data warehouse, which then kind of led to further complications. It's fine for kind of canned reporting, but if you were to kind of change some of the querying, like dates, changing just months, would literally crash their laptop. I'm not making this up. And so this kind of leads to my next point, where a Frankenstack generally lacks the ability to scale, right? They're using non-scalable means to run analytics, and most brands are just simply not big data companies, right? Some are, it's not impossible, but the majority that we come across are not. And the most common Frankenstack characteristic has to do with a very siloed view, which means that there's no deduping or normalization of the marketing data. This is kind of an important point to unpack, so just kind of hang with me here for a minute while I try and explain this. Everyone says that their data is right. All those people with the interconnected lines say that their data is right, right? A typical marketing operation might have DCM, might have core metrics for analytics, could have an attribution vendor, there's spreadsheets in the mix, agencies in the mix. Everyone believes their data is correct, and the more people and the more vendors that you have, the more conflated these problems become. And this is where the stitching together of the monster is actually happening, trying to interlink all these pieces. And when you're adding more stacks, you're adding more silos, you need intelligent connecting of these pieces in the stack and how you bring these sources together. For example, your CRM data, your customer segments that are managed somewhere, new versus existing customers. All this needs to mean the same thing and be accessible across all your channels. So there's this lack of interconnected data. The source of the problem tends to be lack of accessibility. So APIs are really important here. For example, they're essential today. You need APIs to interconnect your data, and they need to be accessible in that way. And I think agencies in particular, just to call them out, can do a lot more along these lines. Oftentimes they are operating in a black box fashion like a lot of vendors in the mix. So really what this is about is deduping, okay? And this comes in a couple different forms. Deduping, in the most simplest sense, is the crediting, let's say, of conversions across channels or partners. So if a sale happens, are you crediting that to display or email or search, or do you want to give some kind of partial credit? But you certainly shouldn't be counting things twice. If your teams are operating in silos, you're counting things twice. Are you really getting the ROI of your total holistic marketing spend? That's what I'm trying to underscore there. And then second, there's normalization that needs to happen around counting methodologies, right? And this is where things get a little complex, and why I call this a bit of a dry subject, right? So for example, AdWords may count 3 raw clicks for the same person in a 30-minute user session, while another vendor in your stack may count it as 1 click, because they're treating it as a session, right? Not a raw click. That's the difference of raw clicks, session clicks. Google's not an easy company to work with to attain the raw data. It's totally possible. Pinterest is another one that may be difficult to get raw data that you need to kind of reconcile these discrepancies. I wish these larger platforms were more open and transparent with their data, and they're getting there. And I think brands and agencies can do more to push them. But raw, unique, imported click counts, these all need to be interpreted and normalized across channels and sources so that you're able to compare apples to apples. And then there's a third form of deduping. This has to do with cross-device or identity deduping, right, of the consumer journey. So if you can't recognize the same person across several devices and dedupe them from your marketing events, again, these are the impressions. When I say marketing events, it's impressions, clicks, and conversions. Those are marketing events. If you can't dedupe them across your channels, across your marketing partners, you definitely have a Frankenstein. Okay, so let's take a breather. Let's back this up a minute and get out of the weeds and get back to where we started, right? All of us intended to build a Superstack, right? And so I wanted to kind of take a shot at kind of describing what I think that looks like. And to me, it's pretty simple. It starts with a big data foundation that is able to basically scale your big data and make it accessible. It's pretty much that simple, right? You need a big data solution that's able to take data in, store it, and make it accessible, right? That's kind of where a Superstack starts. And then next, it's the ability to track and ingest all marketing data, online and offline, at the event level, the source data of where your marketing events are happening, right? So this is all your paid search, all your Facebook ads, direct display, affiliate, offline, all data, all events, all tracked and ingested and stored in this data lake. Now, there are some limitations today in dealing with the walled gardens. However, they are becoming more open and transparent. And like I said, I think if brands and agencies continue to lean on them, they will make it standard even for them. And you can see here that a Superstack also verifies and normalizes the data, including deduping events, users, et cetera, as I mentioned previously. And lastly, it provides accessibility of this data. So notice the flow of data in, data out, because I'm going to refer to that in a few more slides, right? And the accessibility of data and the usability of this data includes algorithmic data modeling, right? And that helps you kind of understand the incrementality tied to real business results. It includes beautiful reporting, whether it's provided by one of the visualization software companies that I mentioned earlier, or is part of the Superstack that you might be building or using. It includes advanced ad hoc analysis capabilities and the ability to make data portable and able to sync and make it interoperable with other systems. But at the core of your Superstack really is a clean, normalized data set. And for some reason, it's very rare to find today. As a company, we're dealing with 600 plus brands. We help them with onboarding and tracking these things. It is rare for us to find a client that has their stuff together in this way. So in order to build a Superstack, it really starts with complete data ingestion. So again, all marketing events, online and offline from any source. And as well, tracking allows you to correlate events at a granular level. These may include AdWords dimensions, ad campaigns, ad groups, keywords. It may include consuming cost data from AdWords and other sources. So a Superstack has the ability to associate click counts to a particular click event, right? So Google, believe it or not, will not provide cost data at the click level. They'll provide it at the keyword level, but not the click level. You need tracking in place in order to get to that level of granularity. So a Superstack can map to track data. Visualization software doesn't care. It's not enough. They're great at what they're doing in terms of aggregate level reporting, but they're only consuming data and reporting at a high level. You need tracking and data ingestion at the event level, to get to the critical level of data that you need to make modern marketing decisions. So there's a couple of companies like Impact's Altitude Product and others who specialize in this ability to ingest and track your marketing data at the source level. So that's important. Okay, next, it should go without saying that a Superstack has the ability to weed out or cleanse your marketing data of fraud. If you weren't aware, fraud is like 30+% of all marketing spend today. 16 billion a year is wasted in fraudulent advertising. Advertising is big business. It's attracted the bad actors. And so it's critical that you cleanse and weed out fraud before you start training your measurement algorithms based on bot behavior. It's going to throw everything off, right? It's an important first stopgap before you interpret the data. According to Cisco, and I'd be interested in a raise of hands if somebody knew this stat, in 3 years, the average person in North America, and in Europe, I'll give you that number, but in North America, the average person is going to have 13 connected devices. And I think it's 8 to 9 people in Europe on average. Did anybody know that? This is like the whole Internet of Things. Your connected, Alexa, your refrigerators. 13 average connected devices in 3 years, right? It's imperative that you adopt a person-oriented view of your data. The ability to identify the same person across many devices in a single customer journey. Otherwise, you're contributing further to the added waste in your marketing investments. I just got to back up. I didn't pause for a minute. Did anybody know that stat? 13 connected devices, or 8 in Europe. Did anybody know that? I just learned that yesterday in looking this up. I didn't realize it had gone up by that much. All right, so maybe we learned at least one thing here today. Okay, and what is the promise of a Superstack if not to advise us on how to invest our next marketing dollar? Right? Whether that's based on incremental business results, be it revenue, sales, profit. I would say the most sophisticated Superstacks of the future are leveraging this kind of AI to help you allocate your budget across channels to specific partners, even getting down to the event level, what you should be bidding or paying out on a commission basis for your various marketing spend. And tell you, when I say run scenarios, this is predictive analytics, be able to tell you what is going to be the impact on your business on any metric based on what they're seeing in the rest of your spend. Okay, so when you step back and look at it, this is it, right? This is what a Superstack looks like in my mind, right? It's a true, scalable system of record of your marketing data at the core, right? It has the ability to track, at the bottom here I'm looking, it has the ability to track and ingest data from all marketing sources, verify the data, dedupe and normalize that data, and it's one with an application layer on top that gives marketers what they truly want, right? How do I take action? What are the actionable insights from all this data, and make it easier to kind of execute their marketing campaigns based on it. But a word of caution, right? Superman had one weakness. What was it? I know you guys know the answer to that one. Kryptonite, right? So if that's true, what is the one weakness of a Superstack? Crypto data. Stay with me. I'm trying to make this a fun subject. Crypto data. Crypto meaning like hidden, right? There's gaps in your data, right? It all kind of rolls up to bad data, right? It's very simple. Bad data in, bad data out. Let me give you a very specific example that I was personally involved in just from a month or so ago. Here's an ad tag from a major online retailer spending millions and millions a year in marketing, and we're onboarding them for a project, and this is the kind of stuff that we're finding. This is like one of hundreds of things that we'll find when we're auditing tags. What I'm showing you here is you've got the Google Analytics UTM source showing this click should be attributed to Bing, and then they were coming off of core metrics as a legacy. Oh, shit, sorry. I gave away the thing. I X'd it out. But it doesn't matter. It's not core metrics' fault. It's how it was implemented. And so the analytics vendor was attributing it to Google in this case, right? That's bad data. I look at this stuff and I'm like, WTF? Like, what is going on? It's almost like the stuff has gotten so complicated, people aren't paying attention to these details, right? And so this typically happens when there's multiple teams and systems that are used in the ad tagging process. And there's no governance or transparency to identify these as underlying issues. So crypto data results in discrepancies that come in two forms, right? I think there are unavoidable types that we should all be aware of, and then there are avoidable types. So in other words, there's things that you really can't control here on your left, and things that you can control on the right. Obviously, that ad tag example I just gave you is an avoidable discrepancy, right? That kind of stuff should not happen, right? But let's take a look at maybe first a few unavoidable ones, right? Counting methodologies, right? Within walled gardens, right? Especially walled gardens, notoriously have a lack of transparency, no audit trail of clicks. Google, I mentioned, will oftentimes report 3 raw clicks compared to somebody else's reporting of 1 session click. And so we find analytics companies tracking that way, MTA solutions tracking that way. Visitors, clicks, user sessions are all very different things, right? Raw visitors are different than unique visitors. So there's some inherent built-in discrepancies with how different platforms count, right? Another unavoidable discrepancy is just internet latency, right? If you're using a tag management vendor, depending on how they're loading, they may load some tags and not, for whatever reason, have time to load other tags, depending on the unique case. It also could be an individual's browser level performance may do the same. There are some inherent discrepancies that happen just with the way the internet and browsers and things work, right? That's just part of life, okay? And even if it's your own site, you may experience performance challenges, and some of them are unavoidable, but most often I see avoidable cases of site performance. It's just the way that your site is designed. It's super important that your tags are asynchronously firing, that you're designing your pages to load with performance in mind for snappy data collection, performance reasons. But discrepancies in the range of up to 10% are a nature of the beast, even for a Superstack, right? That's just part of how everything works, and you need to be comfortable with that. You're never going to get that to 0, just the way different platforms need to work together. But under 10% is certainly acceptable. And then pointing out a few avoidable discrepancies. I already showed you that scary example of inconsistent tagging methods that are certainly avoidable. There's just no excuse for that. I would just say, in addition to that, it needs to be somebody's job, right, or a team of people's responsibility to own and govern the data. And again, this is critical, people. We're collectively spending $1 trillion a year in marketing. It's imperative that we get this stuff right. It shouldn't be that hard. I consider these basics. We should not be shooting ourselves in the foot from the get-go. And lastly, they say CMOs change every couple years or so. And I would just say, if it's me, CMO coming into a new role, the first thing I'm going to do is audit and confirm that we've got proper setup. I look at it as like if you were to buy a new house, move into a new house, first thing I personally am going to do, I'm going to rip out the carpet. I don't know what happened on that carpet. I'm getting it out and putting new carpet in. You need to think about your tags in that same way. Or if you're a retailer, for example, once a year, you may be taking inventory. You need to confirm an account for all products, right? You got to do this bit of cleanup. And so I think it's just healthy to kind of audit your tags and the quality of your data on a regular basis, at least once a year. So if there's one point that I would underscore from this part of the talk here, it's data governance. I think that this is super important. Not enough organizations at the very top, they just, leadership within a company or within a marketing, they just assume that those are the geeks, they know what they're doing. But I think this needs to be leveled up and treated very seriously. So I think you need strong data governance. I think you need an org structure, you need process, you need systems in place to make sure that when you delete something, you delete X, you're updating tags. When you add new labels, you've got labels updated properly, et cetera. It's definitely going to pay off for you if you adopt that. And if you do all this right, you're going to have your house in order, right? You're going to have things connected properly. And so in summary, I'm going to highly encourage you to do a couple things. One, pick a data governance team, right? Just like I said, get a team in place, make it important, and do your audit and review and get processes in place when changes need to happen. Second, I would say audit your tags. If there's one thing you can take away from this talk, don't assume that you're tracking things properly. It is most often the case that it is not being done properly. So I encourage you to head back after dmexco and have a look and set up a team and confirm that you guys are tracking things. It may take you a while to kind of get through that, but do your research. Don't assume things are set up right. Third, I would say embrace discrepancies. Embrace the unavoidable ones, obviously, and then do whatever you can to avoid the ones that you can. And then lastly, I would say get to work on building your Superstack. It's totally doable, right? The updated job description for the CMO is very technical, right? And if you don't have all that expertise and skill set in-house, ask for help. Feel free to reach out to people like myself directly with any questions or feedback to that end. So with that, I want to thank you. My name is Dave Yovanno. I'm the CEO of Impact. Our SaaS products include Forensic for fraud protection, Altitude for measurement and attribution, Radius for performance partnerships. We had an announcement today. We acquired another company called MediaRails, and they're about discovering and recruiting new partners. Look forward to a chance to talk with some of you guys directly and enjoy the rest of dmexco. Thank you. We had a minute. If anyone had a burning question, you can either talk with me privately offline or anybody want to ask a question within the group? Yes, sir.
There's a lot of talk about CDPs so far today, and probably some more tomorrow. Just kind of curious how you see them fitting into the Superstack you talked about. Looked like a lot of the same structure.
I think CDPs are an important part of the Superstack. I mean, most of them started as tag management vendors. A lot of them refer to themselves as like the FedEx of data. And so, I think if you're working with a CDP, I'd be working with, the best in the industry to ensure that latency and things like that are minimized. I would just say that they play an important role in the interconnectivity of data, right? They are definitely a player in this space. They help with it. So, typically clients or brands who aren't using platforms like that have more issues in their data. That's the primary thing. Anybody else? All right, I'll stick around for a few more minutes if anyone's got any other questions, but thanks for sticking around. I appreciate it, guys.